Hey guys, back with a new video. I know it's actually been a while. Another impressions video. I've been wanting to do different types of videos than impressions videos. It feels like I've been doing just pretty much only that, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time coming up with like new ideas for videos. Does anybody else like feel that way? Like I don't know. I've just and I guess between that and I guess haven't really been feeling in the mood to to make some videos. But I'm back. Like I said before, I've been pretty addicted to Monster Hunter. I've actually been taking a break from it now. I haven't been playing it as much as I was. There was like a solid 2 or 3 weeks where that's like all I was doing basically as far as gaming goes. But I did eventually stop that game because I had to get to this game, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, 3D, the new remake of sorts. And I've talked about this game before in my like Zelda series review, and I forget where it ranked. I think it was like number 4 or 5 or something like that. Like it's always been one of my favorite Zelda games. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. I played it back when it came out on the N64. I didn't own it. I always rented it. But it's a game I've always really enjoyed. And it's a game that I feel is kind of overlooked as far as the Zelda series goes. So I was really excited for this new remake, especially looking at some of like the changes they've done. Ocarina of Time 3D on the 3DS. That was a remake, but they didn't really change much. I think the big notable thing was like the touchscreen elements where you could like just tap the iron boots on the touchscreen and you could like equip them on and off, which made the water temple a lot better in that game. There's quite a few different changes in this one though. This is more of a proper remake, I think. And playing this game again, I honestly I think this game's kind of a masterpiece. And in fact, this might sound a bit crazy, but I think this might be my favorite Zelda game now. Even beating Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past. Ocarina of the Time is probably still the more nostalgic game to me. But I think looking at the series, I think this is probably my favorite now, especially with this 3D this remake. Which I mean, I think this is the definitive way to play this game. Some purists might not like some of the changes. I'll go over some of those, but I don't know, like for me, I think this is easily the best version of the game, and it's a great start. It's a great game for someone that hasn't played this game, and in fact, I think this game is great for people that even don't really like Zelda all that much, or don't like the 3D games. And this could be a long video, probably one of the longer impressions video, because I do have a lot to say about this game, and I love this game so much, and I really want people to try to give this game a chance, because I think. Like I said, I think this is honestly kind of a masterpiece. Not to say it's perfect, and I'll go over some things that I don't quite like, and one particular change in this version of the game that I don't really like. But overall, I absolutely had a great time with this game. I actually 100%ed it, which I don't normally do with games, and I've never done that before. But I felt like I wanted to do it with this one, and it was actually not as bad as I was expecting. I've also 100%ed Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time. So I think that's the sign of this game's quality, that I felt compelled to go for 100%. But yeah, where should we start? Let's actually start with the story. Now, Zelda is known for having this really confusing timeline, and it's a mess. And I'll be honest, even though I love the Zelda series, I've never really been enamored with like the stories in these games, or the characters really. I don't know, I just find like a lot of the games in the series fall flat in that regard, like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword especially. I honestly, I thought the stories in those, well, Twilight Princess had some good moments, and Midna I thought was a good character, but Skyward Sword, I hated the story in that game. I just did not care about it at all. Now, Majora's Mask is technically a sequel to Ocarina of Time. It takes place after that, featuring that same Link that you saw in that game. But it takes place in Termina, which is a whole different world from Hyrule. There's no Ganondorf in this game. There is no Princess Zelda. And I think that's a really refreshing change. Back then, I think people were probably a bit confused by that, but the fact that so many Zelda games have to rely on that Ganondorf, Triforce, Zelda-type storyline, I love how this is completely separate from the other games. Some Zelda games kind of go, like, are separate from, like, the main timeline, and those are the, like, okay, story-wise, this is easily my favorite story in the Zelda series. In fact, I'd argue probably one of the only really good ones. In fact, I think the storyline and characters in this game are flat out amazing. I'm not going to touch on it too much because I think this is something I would want people to experience. But basically, you find yourself in Termina, and you meet up with this the Skull Kid, and he's got this mask called Majora's Mask that kind of controls him, and he steals like Epona from you, and he turns you into a Deku Scrub, and then basically you find yourself in Clocktown a bit later, which is like the main city or town of Termina, and you notice there's a giant moon in the sky, this evil-looking moon. It's really cool. And the gist of the game is that you have 3 days before the moon crashes down onto the planet and destroys everything. And right now, I'll say like this is easily the darkest Zelda game in the series. Playing through this, I'm surprised at how dark this game is at times. And the game just has this very creepy atmosphere to it and a sense of dread that's always looming because you always see this moon, and it's the fact that the game is set in this 3-day cycle, especially with like the final hours of this game, like this really great song plays that's very moody and ominous, and it's, I don't know, you see, like, it's, again, I don't want to say too much more about the story than that, but the main villain, Skull Kid, I think is a very sympathetic villain, and is actually one of my favorites in the entire series. And I don't know, it's, in a way, there's like a lot of tension in this game that a lot of Zelda games just, for me, just don't have. Because these characters in this game, you really get to know them because you're on this 3-day cycle, and each character has their own schedule and feelings about like what's going to happen on the final day when the moon crashes down. And I feel like there's things at risk in this game. You want to kind of help these townsfolk and kind of solve their problems. And I found myself really invested in the world, the characters, and the story, which I can't say that about any other Zelda game. And in fact, there's even some really emotional moments in this game. The Cafe and Anju side quest, I don't want to spoil it, but Zelda Majora's Mask is very heavily focused on side quests. So it's not a game you can really rush, and I feel like if you try to rush this game and just try to get it finished, you're actually probably not going to enjoy the game all that much. I think really where where I enjoy this game the most is are like the characters and the side quests. And this Cafe and Anju side quest, I don't want to spoil it. I would recommend doing this quest. Anyone that's playing this game, you might have to look up like a wiki, because I'll talk about this a bit later, but this game's actually more obtuse than I was expecting. This game doesn't hold your hand, which is refreshing too. But this Cafe and Anju side quest, I highly recommend doing it. It basically takes up all 3 days of the cycle, so you've got to really focus on the side quest and not anything else. And it can be a bit of a pain in some aspects, but I assure you, the payoff is insanely, it's great. Like, the payoff is well worth it. And the ending of that side quest, I've done it a few times, and I actually usually do it at least once every time I play through this game. It gets me emotional every time, the ending of that side quest. I highly recommend anyone that's playing this game do that side quest. And the ending of this game, too, is terrific. One of my favorite endings in a Zelda game. And again, I don't want to say it made me tear up, but I certainly got a bit emotional. I always do when I play this game. And again, I can't say that for any other Zelda game. So yeah, I think like the story and characters is honestly one of the biggest highlights with Majora's Mask. So yeah, let's talk about, I guess, I'll save gameplay for later. Visually, they've, being a remake, they've spruced things up. Character models are really nice looking. I love what they've done with a lot of the environments in this remake. The N64 version, I won't lie, it's kind of ugly by today's standards. So it was nice to get this new version with upgraded graphics. I don't know. Visually, yeah, it's a great looking game. The 3D is pretty nice too, although I turned it off for a while because I'm not into the 3D. Although I'm curious what it's like on the new 3DS. It actually probably looks gorgeous on that, but yeah, visually it's nice. I will talk about the visuals though, where I think like I've talked about atmosphere before with this game, and I think in like my Zelda series review, I think this game has one of the best atmospheres I've ever seen in a video game, and I think this has to do with like the visual presentation and the environments, and the sense of dread I talked about before with the moon crashing down in 3 days, and of course the music too, which I'll talk about now. The music in this game, I think it's flat out phenomenal. It's a lot more moody than, say, Ocarina of Time soundtrack, which was very catchy, a lot of like very memorable songs in that game. I think this soundtrack is right up there with it. A lot of moody, memorable songs in this game that really get under your skin, but in a really good way. There's one song that plays for each new area, like Snowhead, the Woodfall, Swamp, Akana Canyon, and like the Great Bay. It's the same song that plays in each of these areas, but it has a different mood with each area. Like the instruments are different, like the instrumentation for this song. Like it's still the same song, but it has a different feel depending on each of these areas. And it's one of those things that, like, I picked up on it. I didn't really actually quite pick up on it as a kid, but playing this remake now, I really did pick up on that. It's subtle, but it's really great. It really adds to the atmosphere. Everything just in this game comes together to create one of the best atmospheres I've seen in a game. The music is a big part of that. Like the Clock Town theme, I loved. It's very happy and kind of catchy and memorable. But on the third day, it's different. On the second day too, it gets faster on each day. So on the third day, it's sped up like to an insane degree, which I think is a nice touch. There's all sorts of little details with this game that I absolutely love. The Final Hours song is my favorite in the game. It plays during the last few hours on the final day. It's honestly probably one of the best pieces of music I've ever heard in a video game. It's always been one of my favorites, but the remake made me enjoy that song even more because it adds so much to the atmosphere of the game. And atmosphere is one of those things that's hard to talk about and describe. It's one of those things you just have to play the game to really get that atmosphere. And there's a YouTuber by the name of Matthew Matosis. He's pretty popular. He does really in-depth reviews of video games. And he did a review of Majora's Mask. It's like a 40-minute video. If you have the time, I definitely recommend watching that. It does have spoilers, though. So it's really only for fans of the game. But he kind of goes into detail of how great the atmosphere in this game is and how it all works. And he does a much better job of explaining things than I ever could. So definitely check out his video too after this. I definitely highly recommend that. Yeah, gameplay-wise, let's talk about the gameplay now. Now, yes, this game does take place over a 3-day cycle, and there is a time limit involved. Now, there are ways to, you can slow it down with a certain song you learn on the Ocarina. But yes, you are timed throughout this game. You basically, how it works is, you can do like a pre-dungeon area, which like each area, you go through each area and you do some like little quests and things like that. And basically, once you've kind of done all that, you unlock the dungeon for that area. And you don't have to do everything in that area and the dungeon all in one cycle. You can unlock these like owl statues that you save, and like you can kind of warp between owl statues. So that cuts down on time too. And there's an owl statue before each dungeon, so you can actually like go back to the first day and do a whole dungeon in one cycle. And with the time slowed down, it's actually not too much of a worry. I know a lot of people are turned off by the time limit aspect, and playing this game again, I won't lie, some people might not be able to get over it. They might feel rushed. I think it adds some tension to the game, and again, I think the time limit is what ultimately makes this game so special. The game is designed around that. The story is designed around that. It was incredibly unique for the time, and I still think it's really unique now. There's lots, like I said, there's a way to slow down the time so you don't feel too rushed. Now, 100%ing the game is where you do tend to feel rushed. The Great Bay Temple, well, each temple has like 15 stray fairies you gotta find. You can get like upgrades if you find them all and bring them to a fairy fountain. And that's where the time limit can get a bit hairy. The Great Bay Temple, which is a temple I despise, honestly. I almost ran out of time because I was searching forever for like the last few fairies. So yeah, it can be a bit hairy. Like I had the countdown going during the boss of that dungeon, but overall, I don't think it's too bad. Um, and basically, the N64 version had like a lot of waiting around for certain events to happen. And in this game, you have a song that basically allows you to jump to any hour ahead. You can't go back an hour, but any hour ahead. And that cuts down a lot of the tedium that I felt was there in the original game. And that's a change that's been kind of controversial. It's one I actually really like. You get a bomber's notebook in this game too. You got it in the N64 version. It works a bit differently here. And what this does is let you keep track of events throughout the game and characters you meet. And it's basically like a side quest journal. But in this version, you can kind of set alarms now for when certain things are going to happen. It will show you like different parts on the map where you need to be. So it's a lot more helpful than it was in the N64 version. But some people might think it might add like too much handholding the game. I didn't feel that way. You got to put in some effort too with these side quests. So I like the improved Bomber's Notebook. In terms of other changes, what else do you got? The saving system. Okay, this is my favorite change in the game, and it's one that has also got some controversy. In the original game, you would find these owl statues that basically acted as suspend saves. You'd save your game, but the game would like quit. Like you'd have to just quit the game and then resume from there when you'd power the system back on. But in this game, you save and you can quit the game and you'll reload back at the save. I think the N64 version you had to like go back to the beginning of the first day or something. It's been a while, but what this allows you to do, though, is like there's save points all over this game, and in dungeons as well. A good example is a certain side quest that happens on the first day, where you have to kind of defend a barn from an alien invasion, from like 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. And in the original game, you had to, if you failed that section, you had to go all the way back to the first day and go through a bunch of shit to kind of get back to that point. But in this, because of the save system, there's an owl statue right in front of the event. So you can kind of save there. So if you fail this event, you can just reload the game. You'll be at that owl statue. You can use the song to jump ahead to 2 a.m. And you're immediately starting over at the event if you failed it. I like this. Again, it cuts down on the tedium. At the same time, I can understand that, yes, it gets rid of some tension when playing through this game, especially with dungeons. Because you can save in a dungeon, right? And if you find time's running out, for instance, you could be at a boss, right? And you run out of time, and you get a game over. You can just reload your save. You're back in the dungeon, and you don't have to make too much of a trek to get back to the boss. Whereas in the N64 version, you would have had to go back to like the first, or you would have had to do the dungeon pretty much all over again. So yeah, the save system is one of those things. I can understand some people not actually liking it all that much. To me, it was actually the best change in the game. I don't know. Again, like it cut down on tedium for me. And I think for people that are, for newcomers, I think they're really going to enjoy that. Other changes, there's a fishing mini game that I really didn't delve much into, but that's cool for people that want to jump into that. I really loved the fishing in Ocarina of Time when I was a kid, but nowadays it's something that's not really appealing to me. And there's no way to keep track of the fish you catch, so it's not required for 100% completion, which honestly I'm kind of glad. But that's I guess a cool new feature for some people that are into that. But I guess the one change I did not like are the controls for the Zora. You can become you get different masks. I haven't really talked about that, but you basically collect different masks in this game, and they each give you like different abilities. The main masks let you like transform into a Deku Scrub, a Goron, a Zora, and that changes how the game's played. There's really cool puzzles involving those masks, but the Zora mask. The N64 version, I thought it controlled really well, but in this version, I don't know what they did to it. I found myself bumping against walls constantly. To do your kind of speed boost move where you can kind of like swim really fast through the water and kind of dive out like a dolphin, it costs magic now, which I didn't like. I don't know, it feels like slower, the Zora controls now. I don't know, anytime I was a Zora, it was kind of a pain in the ass. And that also made the Great Bay Temple even more of a pain in the ass. And that's a dungeon I've never liked that dungeon. Speaking of dungeons, there's only 4 in this game, which is a big departure from a lot of Zelda games, and it's something a lot of people don't like. For me, I actually don't mind it. Again, because this game is focused heavily on side quests. That's where you'll be spending most of your time doing side quests and doing like the pre-dungeon areas. But yeah, dungeon-wise, the Swamp Dungeon I think is good. The Snowhead Dungeon is also quite good. Great Bay Temple I can't stand. And the Stone Tower Temple is my favorite temple in the game. I think it's honestly one of the best dungeons in the series. I don't want to spoil the gimmick for it, but it's really neat. Yeah, and getting the stray fairies in that dungeon, I was expecting it to be a pain in the ass. Alex, a Return to Mother Base, he was mentioning how it was a total pain in the ass. And so I was actually fearing the worst with that dungeon, but luckily I was actually able to find them all and get the dungeon finished without running out of time, which I just definitely wasn't expecting. But yeah, Stone Tower Temple is absolutely amazing. Pacing-wise, the game I think does kind of falter a bit in the Great Bay area. Like that area is much longer than every other area in the game, and there's like a Zora egg gathering section and a stealth section that I'm not too crazy about. Then of course you top it off with the Great Bay Dungeon, which I'm not too fond of. So there are parts of this game I don't like. There's like this bottom of the well section in a Canyon, which is basically this really annoying fetch quest. It's basically filler that I think could have been just entirely scrapped from the game. But yeah, so I mean, there are, the Zora change I didn't like. There are sections of this game I don't like. So even though I think this game is kind of a masterpiece, it's not perfect. But what game is really? I'm trying to think of other gameplay. Like, I mean, I loved collecting the masks. I loved going for all like the heart pieces. There's some fun mini games. There's just a lot to explore here, and the world just feels really alive because these characters have their own schedules. They feel like real people, and you really want to solve their problems. So yeah, it's just I really had a great time with it. Like going for 100% was really rewarding. You do get like a super overpowered mask if you try to go for all the masks. But yeah, the ending of this game, like there's this ending section I don't want to spoil, but it's really memorable too. But yeah, like I'm trying to think other gameplay things. I mean, it's your tried and true Zelda formula for the most part, other than like the side quest stuff. You do pre-dungeon area, you unlock a dungeon. They play out the same way as with most Zelda games. But I don't know, man. To me, like the Majora's Mask just remains fresh and exciting, which I have a hard time saying that about some other Zelda games. Like I love Ocarina of Time, but I can see how some people might not like that game nowadays. I actually don't think Ocarina of Time holds up as well as Majora's Mask. I think this game just gets better with age. Especially playing this remake, which I think is easily the best version of the game. So yeah, okay, so maybe this video didn't go on as long as I expected it to, but yeah, I highly recommend this game. I definitely had a great time with it. And yeah, it's probably my favorite Zelda game now, which it comes as a surprise to me for sure. And yeah, definitely the most overlooked game in the series, I think. So if the time limit thing kind of puts you off, no, it's actually not too bad. Although I do recommend just trying not to rush through this game, like really explore and find out what this game has to offer, and do the side quests. But yeah, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.